This episode of History Saver is brought to you by Addressing Gettysburg. Addressing Gettysburg is a podcast that shares great experiences, quality programs, awesome guests, and is a welcoming community for all who love Gettysburg. So join in with host Matt Callery and find out why Addressing Gettysburg is one of the top-rated podcasts online today. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, Podbean, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, right here on YouTube. So check out Addressing Gettysburg today, where history is not boring. Thank you to Addressing Gettysburg for sponsoring this video.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
All right, so on our final day here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, we cannot leave without coming here to the American World War II Experience Museum and seeing this place for ourselves. So let's jump inside and see what the World War II American Experience here in Gettysburg has to offer. So the museum here, the World War II American Experience, has just opened a case of a very, very neat and mystical item. So let's give you a closer look at this thing. So this is the Sink Grill, or what is known as the Sink Grill. And this is said to have connections to Colonel Robert F. Sink, who previously was of the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment and was also the first regimental commander of the 506 PIR, or Parachute Infantry Regiment. Of course, today they are made famous by the movie Band of Brothers, and that includes Colonel Sink. Well, this thing has a long and interesting history behind it. The cup itself is used to hold certain beverages and celebrations and different ceremonies of the regiment. And it is said to be made out of Hitler's silver. Well, that's not really correct. Also, the wooden base at the bottom is said to be made from one of Hitler's table legs. Well, that's not correct either. It's actually Toccoa wood. And this is definitely not silver. It is incorrect. And the wings are said to be Colonel Sink's. Well, that I just don't know if anybody really knows if those were his or not. But the handles as well is said to be off of one certain parachute, but is actually the handles off of a different parachute, which is the AN 6511 seat parachute used by the U.S. Army Air Force crews. And this cup has been all over during World War II, was in Korea, and then it stayed in Korea until it was recently returned to museums here in the United States. And you can come here to the museum, read the history of this thing for itself, but it is on lawn here, and you could come and take a look at this thing because it has a long and storied history with the unit and military history. So we're here with Adam with the World War II American Experience Museum. And of course, he knows a lot more than I do about this stuff. And there's some neat items you could come here and see for yourself that belong to some pretty famous individuals during World War II. And what exactly are we looking at here?
Well, we've got a case with some really interesting items here, in my opinion. The helmet we're looking at right here with the net. Sergeant Reuben Hoover was a member of the 4th Armored Division with the 24th Armored Engineers. And the helmet still retains the damage from a piece of shrapnel that penetrated the top of his helmet, wounded him, but luckily he made it home, and his descendants lived not too far here from Gettysburg, and they brought these items in and donated them to the museum. So we're happy to tell the story of Hoover and the 4th Armored. Some other items, we've got General Matt Ridgway's winter cap that he wore in Korea. We also have his footlockers that he used in World War II and then in Korea, but this is the winter cap he wore over there. And there's some famous photos in Life magazines during that time with him wearing this cap, and a photo of him riding in the Jeep with General MacArthur. So pretty neat guy, and definitely a really cool story with the cap and with Ridgway. We've got a colonel's helmet here. Colonel Hubert Miller was in charge of the 19th Corps Engineers, and one of the more notable things they did were knock out several guns at Normandy. There he is photoed next to one of the German guns, and he was later decorated by Patton. So we've got his uniforms and a lot of paperwork items and so forth, maps, but the helmet really has a great look to it, and it was definitely there with him and his men. On this shelf, we've got some items from General Mark Clark, and Clark was in charge of the 5th Army Group, and we've got his helmet here, his leather holster, pocket watch, lighter, shirt, gloves, some of his medals, the flag off of his staff car, and all these items were given to his driver by Clark after the war, and we came into obtaining these about 25-30 years ago. So we're happy to display them for the public to see.
All right, guys. So this is one of the tour guides here at the World War II American Experience Museum. This is Richard. He knows a lot more about this place and the items in here than I do. But there is a really cool item right up here on the wall as you enter that has a lot to do with December the 7th, 1941. And he's going to explain a little bit more about this flag because it's got a really, really neat history to it.
So we have an unusual artifact here that we just saw up on the wall, and it's a Japanese rank flag, and it flew on Admiral Yamamoto's flagship, the Nagato, and he was the designer of the attack on Pearl Harbor. And his battleship was back at Japan. The 6 carriers that were going to conduct the attack were out off of the coast of Hawaii. So he sent the order, the command to proceed, which was climb Mount Nataka. They proceeded with their attack. When they realized how successful it was, they radioed back Tora, 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 which was a confirmation that the attack had been a success. So it's called a rank flag, and we captured this battleship off of the coast at the end of the war when they surrendered. And that flag was taken off of the ship, came to America, and then eventually found its way into our collection. So we're standing in front of a mobile maintenance machine shop that the Army would have used as part of its tactical and logistical support. You have to recall that World War II is a mechanized, motorized war, and we have a lot of machinery that's going to need to be repaired. So a vehicle like this on a GMC truck body was extremely important. It would follow behind the battle line and be able to do repairs on damaged vehicles in order to keep them in good operating order and therefore allow the armies to move forward and keep the pressure on the enemy. So there was a lot of welding and cutting going on, and 2 unique items that we have here are acetylene gas generators. So there's a technique called oxyacetylene welding, and the engineers, mechanics, needed to create their own acetylene gas while they were in the field. So we have 2 acetylene generators here, where the chemical is placed at the top, it drops into the bottom where there's water, and acetylene gas is produced to be mixed with oxygen and then used to light torches. So right now we're looking at the interior of the mobile maintenance machine shop. And as you scan through the shop, you can see it looks like something that someone would have in their garage or their basement, or even a factory here in the States. You have a lathe, grinding, generators. There's that oxyacetylene tank that I talked about with the oxygen for welding and cutting. So everything that the mechanics would need to maintain equipment is located here. We're scanning now on the exterior of the truck. And it had these adjustable workbenches and an adjustable roof, so that when we move forward, remember this is a mobilized war, as we move forward, this truck can be folded inward and follow behind. So we're standing in front of a Sherman M4 tank that was manufactured in 1945. The tank crew consisted of 5 people. The driver, who would be situated under this hatch, the assistant driver and machine gunner, who sits on this side of the vehicle. Then we have a tanker that loads the artillery piece. We have a tanker that aims and fires it. And then we have a commander farther up in the turret. So it's a 5-man crew. And they worked as a team to keep this tank in action. This particular tank has a 105 millimeter howitzer on it. And we're going to look down here at an example of what a shell would look like that would be fired out of this. The triangle is the symbol for the tank group, and this is the 2nd Armored. And this helmet is unique because it has a soldered-on brass enameled insignia. And the owner of this helmet also attached barbed wire around the rim.
Now, is that German barbed wire?
Well, it could be. My supposition is that he wanted to show how tough he was. And he did that by attaching barbed wire. So we're in front of another M4 Sherman tank. This one has some variations to it. First of all, it's in the artillery piece, which is a 76 millimeter. You'll notice it's a lot longer and a little bit smaller bore in the rifling. Therefore, it takes a shell that's a different size than what we looked at when we were viewing the howitzer. You can see how this shell is somewhat narrower and longer. We're still going to have the same 5-man crew. And another added feature on this tank was the unique storage for the ammunition. This had what was called wet stowage. And there was a compartment lower in the body of the tank where the artillery shells were stored, and there was a fluid surrounding those shells to help minimize combustion should some molten metal come flying in to the turret area. So now we're in front of a tank destroyer. This is an M36 tank destroyer. So there was a doctrine, an anti-armor doctrine, that the Army attempted to employ against Nazi tanks. And that was to develop a specialized vehicle that could lie in wait and then come out when it was needed to intercept a breakthrough of German armor. And in order to be effective at doing that, they needed a much larger artillery piece. And this gun on here is a 90 millimeter gun, and it is much longer and of a larger bore than the 76 millimeter that we just looked at. And this is also illustrated in the type of artillery shell that's fired. You can see the diameter and the length of this shell is much larger. This was designed to penetrate German armor and act as a tank destroyer.
So we have been here at the World War II American Experience Museum, and thank you, Richard, so much for taking us around, showing us around the museum. And tell us a little bit about the World War II weekend you guys have coming up later on this month.
Sure, that's the last weekend in July, and we have a full slate of activities for people who are interested in World War II. Of course, you can come in and tour the museum. We're also going to have living historians, vehicle demonstrations. Friday night, we're going to have a period dance with a live big band. Many people that attend the dance dress in 1940s attire. Saturday night, we have some other activities planned. It's going to run Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I really would encourage people to come out if you want to experience World War II.
And guys, as you know, World War II reenact. So there's a lot of World War II reenactors that watch this channel all across the country. And if you are one of those, why don't you come out and support these guys here in Gettysburg? Come out, have a great time at this event. Contact them. They'll get you where you need to be. And this place is amazing. You can also see this place featured on the History Underground. Of course, JD Hewitt's channel here on YouTube. Go visit our friend JD and the History Underground. We've had a great time with him here in Gettysburg as well. And come check out this museum because there's a lot of cool stuff here. And thank you, Richard, for taking us around again. And until next time, guys, keep preserving history. Stay safe. We will see you on the next episode.